Thank you for joining me again today on my channel. This is Novel Idea and I am Dia. And today I wanted to do kind of a quick wrap up for this final day in June and just tell you what I've read so far this final week in June. Which hasn't been an entire week since the last wrap up, but I wanted to not carry this into July. So thanks again for joining me and let's jump in. The very first thing that I read was, or finished, I should say, I've been reading it pretty much the whole month of June. It's Hunger of the Gods by Gwynn. This was part of the reason why this took me so long was because this was a really hard book for me to stomach. It's very gory. It is very bloody. It is very battle heavy. All of these things are not my favorite. I read Shadow of the Gods and there was a lot more character work in Shadow of the Gods than there was in Hunger of the Gods. And so there was still blood, there was still gore, there were still battles in Shadow of the Gods, but in Hunger of the Gods, it was threefold that it was all of that on steroids. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to go on in this series. I really want to find out what happens to my two favorite characters. But I don't know if the next one is going to be as gory, as battle heavy, yeah, as just descriptive of all of that stuff, if I'm going to be able to do it. So I very well may end up just watching some YouTuber give me a final verdict on everything and watch a spoiler video of what happens to these characters, because I don't know that I can really handle another book like this one. If you don't know much about this series, it's very Norse mythology inspired. Norse inspired, whether it's mythology or not. But Norse mythology inspired, kind of almost shape-shifting type of magic, as well as gods and demigods and children of gods and all of that kind of thing. This book picks up right at the moment that the other book left off. So there's no space of time, there's no time jump or anything like that. We get a much wider world perspective in Hunger of the Gods. In Shadow of the Gods, it was very narrow focused on, like I said, there was a lot more character work in Shadow. So we got to kind of focus in on certain people. With this one, it's much more groups of people, kind of the idea of bands of brothers, kinds of things, and then also kingdoms and who wants to rule over who, and then the gods themselves and who they need to battle in order to win the whole thing and all of that kind of thing. There is absolutely no rest, zero rest between battles, between dismemberment, between all of the gore and the healing and all of that. There's no rest. It's battle, 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 battle. And there's things that happen within those battles that are really great, and things that happen within those battles that are not so great. But that's all it is. The entire book is nothing but battles. The original protagonist from the first book is in this one. Her quest is still the same quest, still completely in God-forsaken lands. It's not a pretty world. It is not a kind world. It is completely populated with barbarians, including the main protagonist. This is a really hard series to swallow for somebody that is not all about that kind of thing. There are no characters that are safe in this book, just like there were none that were safe in the first book. There are several times where you wonder whether the protagonist in the next book is going to be the same protagonist that's in this book. Anybody that remained from that first book that is in this second book, I feel much more connected to, and I was much more interested in their story than I was anybody that was introduced that was new. I gave this sequel a B, the lowest B that I could give. I gave it an 83. It almost was a B minus. Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynn. Next book that I want to talk about is A Magic Steeped in Poison. This is by Judy Lynn, and it is a YA fantasy, a very slow-moving, at least initially, slow-moving fantasy book. So there are some YA books that, as an adult, I find much easier to read because they are written in an adult way, but the language, the context, the characters, the thought processes, the relationship kind of issues and initiations and questions and all of that kind of stuff feel very YA in this book. It's a quest story, and it is a quest for knowledge to save a character that is loved. And so they go on a quest, stuff happens along the way, and that is our book. There were very many times in the story that I felt like what was happening was just way too convenient. It was way too easy. And there are relationships in the book that feel forced. Like, I have to have this happen, and so I'm going to bring these two people together and make it happen. And that's kind of what it felt like. The main character of the story is spunky. She is brave. She is generous. She's kind. And she is very easy to like and to root for. And that is the reason why I finished the book, basically. The story ends right when things are beginning to get interesting and when you really become intrigued with what's going to happen next. It does leave you on a cliffhanger. So you definitely want to pick up the next book, even if you didn't enjoy the first one. I give this a B minus. It is an 80%. Magic Steeped in Poison, Judy Lynn. I continued in my short stories by Dostoevsky. And this one was a short story called The Crocodile. And I'm back to laughing with Dostoevsky. I expect to always be introspective. I expect to be challenged. I expect to be searching for the meaning beneath whatever it is that he is talking about. Until I read this book, did not expect to laugh. And 3 of the 4 short stories that I have read so far have been so hilarious. And The Crocodile got me right back there. So The Crocodile is very much a metaphor for what was happening in Russian government at the time that Dostoevsky was writing this. The fact that there was a lot of blather, that there was a lot of hot air and a lot of big talk and lofty thoughts, but nothing really could be done. Nothing really was actually happening. That is The Crocodile. So The Crocodile is about a husband and wife and their good friend that go to an exhibition. There happens to be a live crocodile there, and this crocodile somehow swallows our main character whole, and he survives. He not only survives, but he is able to communicate from within the crocodile. The friend is the one who is telling us all of this story. And he is telling us the story in a very frustrated manner because he is trying to figure out a way to get our character out of the crocodile. And he is being thwarted constantly by people you would never expect him to be thwarted by. So he is thwarted by the crocodile's owner. So the person that brought the crocodile to the exhibition to begin with. So he is thwarted by the crocodile's owner, which you do expect. But then he's also thwarted by the main character's wife, who is just like, leave him there. I'm good. And the main character himself does not want to be removed from the crocodile. And so, like I said, it is a metaphor for so many things. But the thing that got me with this story was that it's not full of metaphors. It's like all these metaphors, yes, that have been swallowed up and are now living within one metaphor. The entire story is just one big metaphor. And it's fascinating. I don't know how he did it. He did not write an ending to the story, and that in and of itself is metaphorical for the way that things were going in Russia at the time. There was no end in sight. And so, yeah, Dostoevsky is, nobody's going to convince me otherwise. He's a genius. And I do love the way that he makes me think and he makes me dig deep. So anyway, Crocodile, Dostoevsky, 97%, back to laughing, loving every minute of it. The next book is a book that was recommended to me by Kim over at Middle of the Book March. She picked this up on, I think, just a whim. She loved the cover of it, and so she decided to pick it up and got into a conversation with the author just randomly, and the author might end up doing an interview with her on her channel. So that's pretty exciting. But this book is The Nature of Small Birds. Sorry, I've got a hair tickling me here. This book is The Nature of Small Birds by Susie Finkbeiner. It was a story that really captured my heart in so many ways. it follows one particular child out of the 3,000 something that were airlifted out of Vietnam, I think 1975, maybe 73, 1970 something, early 70s. Thousands of children that were airlifted out of Vietnam, brought to America, and then adopted out by Western families. And this follows one of those girls and her family, and then her decision to go and find her birth family in Vietnam, and just how that affects the rest of her family. And we follow three main characters, 3 separate years. So we have 1975, 1989, 88, some 83, I don't know. And then 2000 something as well. Most of the time when I read these kind of books, I expect for just these horrific things to happen, because modern literature just seems to embrace family, just the rift and the yuck that is out there. I expected maybe for there to be some sort of incest that happened, or some sort of rape that happened, or some sort of misconduct of some sort. And none of that happened. You guys, this was the best story. It still feels very real. It still feels very warm and genuine. It still feels very true to the time that it is being told. But it does not go into the dark underbelly of things. It is very much a loving family. It's very much a close-knit, how can we work it out? What is it that we need to do to make things happen? Susie did this beautifully. She just did it beautifully. It was, like I said, it was warm. It was unifying. It was uplifting. It was so good. So I can't say enough sweet stuff about this book. Coming of age, definitely. Family dynamics, definitely. But on a very positive side of them. The only thing that bugged me in this book is that there is a grandmother who is not kind, who is not nice, and who not only gives the mom a horrible time prior to Mindy coming, but she gives Mindy a horrible time. And there's no place in the book where anyone stands up to her and puts her in her place. And as someone who has had realm to have dwelt in, I just wish somebody would have done that. Whether that was the dad, because it was his mom that was doing all of that. So I wish that Bruce would have done that. Or I wish that even one of the other girls would have done it. And one of her sisters. So anyway, wonderful book. I gave it an A, 97%, and would highly recommend it for just a really good, feel-good kind of read for anybody that enjoys those coming-of-age, family dynamic kind of stories. Yeah, good book. But this one is lemortedarthur, lemortedarthur, and this is by Sir Thomas Malory. This is only the first volume, and I read this partially because I hate it. The white book that was the Once and Future King that I read prior to this about Arthur. And he kept citing Thomas Malory as his, person that he was pulling all this information from. Let me tell you, this is a proper Arthurian retelling. This is a good Arthurian telling. Whites, no. So this one starts pre-Arthur, and it's his father and a little bit about his grandparents and about his mother, which we really don't hear about in T.H. White at all. This is not novel in a linear storytelling kind of sense. He jumps around. So we have Uther, which is Arthur's father, and we have his mother, and we find out a little bit about her story. And then we have Lady of the Lake, and we have a night here and a night there, and we have Arthur growing up, and so it's not linear. So it feels a little choppy, but that's my only complaint about this book. The language in this book, so this is a very, very old book. I don't even know when it was first published. I want to say it was like the 14th century. Yeah, so he died in 1471. So it was published in the 1300s, or the first time it was written, I should say, in the 1300s. So the language is very archaic, but it feels so appropriate for this story that it's easy to follow, it's easy to understand. There's not anything that you feel like, other than just the jumping back to, different people and places and times and that kind of stuff. It's easy to follow. It's not hard to know who's talking. It's not hard to understand the progression of the story. It's chivalric, it's medieval, it's magic, it's lovely. It is lovely. It is dark. And yet fraught with hope and light. And this is this particular volume, this volume 1, is Arthur when he has all these dreams that he's trying to bring about, where he is hopeful as a very young king to have all of these things happen. He hasn't become the Arthur of late years who hasn't had a child and has had to share his wife and all of those kinds of things. I only docked it in points because of the choppiness and the jumping around. Other than that, I will say that because of the choppiness and the jumping around, it doesn't feel quite as complete as it would have if it would have been linear. And that is the reason why I docked it points. So I gave this still an A. It's a 94%. And I don't know if I'm going to read volume 2. I might. It might be a while before I read it, but the reason for that is just because we're going to get into the Guinevere, Lancelot, Arthur triangle. And that's not my favorite part of the story. This pretty much had my very favorite parts. So I may stop here. The last book that I read, I just finished this morning, and that's the reason why I don't have anything written down for it. And I actually listened to it on audio because I got it for free. It was The Dark is Rising, and this is by Susan Cooper. And it is the second book in her Dark is Rising series. I think there are 5 books in the series, and I read the first one quite a while ago. But this one is different main characters, different side of the story. The other one was a little more modern day. This one felt like we took some jumps back in time quite often. I don't want to tell you too much about it because it was a sequel, but basically it's kind of these dark forces from ancient beginning of the world time that want to recapture their glory days. And these people that have reincarnated almost throughout the years that are in opposition. So good versus evil and all of that. And so these ones are called the Old Ones. And our main protagonist is an old one. And he is actually only like 10, 11 years old, 12 years old in the story. So I thoroughly enjoyed it as much as you can enjoy something about the Dark Rising. And like I said, second book, but almost a completely different story from the first. And I have a feeling that Susan Cooper is going to take all these little threads and weave them into something that's very cohesive. Right now, it doesn't feel cohesive. They, like I said, feel like completely different stories. But I liked it very much. I just finished it. I don't feel like I've had time really to process it enough to give it a grade, but maybe we'll swing back around to that next month when I wrap up my first part of July or something. But yeah, The Dark is Rising, Susan Cooper. It was that book. Okay, so I just want to really quickly touch on what I am going to be reading besides my Jane Austen July stuff. The first thing is the book that I'm in the middle of right now, and that is Hounded. And I don't remember who that's by, but I will put a picture up. And then also I am going to be reading this Rupi Kaur book, and The Sun and Her Flowers. And this is poetry. It feels very summer to me. So this is, I'm going to just show you the chapter titles here. And it's Wilting, Falling, Rooting, Rising, Blooming. And I just think that this is going to be wonderful for this season. And so I thought that I would pick it up for July, maybe July and August. Depends on how much of it I decide to read. They're very short. I am not a poetry person, so usually. So we'll see how much I can actually stand of this. And if she's too modern day for me, it may not end up getting read all the way at all, but we'll see. And then I thought that I might read J.L. Carr's A Month in the Country. I saw this on Miranda Mills' channel, and I thought that I might give it a try. We'll see. It may not be for me, so again, I may just set it aside, go on to something else. And Edith Wharton has this little tiny book. It's exactly 200 pages. It's called Summer. It says that it is the hot Ethan Frome. So we'll see. I don't know, again, if this is going to be my cup of tea. It is told from a woman's perspective rather than the male perspective of Ethan Frome. I don't know how I'm going to react to this at all, but I thought that I would give it a try because it is called Summer. A couple of my friends read a book a while ago called The Tin Flute by Gabrielle Roy, and I don't have the Tin Flute, but I do have The Road Past Altamont. And so I thought that I would try this, and I only know that it's about an artist. That's all I know. This is mine. I own this, and I've never read it. So I don't have very many books on my shelves that I haven't read, but this is one of them. So I thought I would try that. So The Road Past Altamont, Gabrielle Roy. The final book that I am going to try to read in the month of July is A Circle of Quiet. And this is journal entries by Madeleine L'Engle from her last few years maybe at Crosswicks, which was their house in the country. It's where she wrote all of her books from, mainly. And so these are just journal entries, just day-to-day life kind of things that were happening. So that's it, you guys. That's everything that I have. I'm going to be doing my Jane Austen July. I'll be doing these 4 or 5 also, and that is everything. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful week, and I will be here on Friday probably with the mid-year freakout tag, if I can if I can edit myself enough. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for joining me again today, you guys, and chat with me down in the comments. Tell me if you have read any of these books, if you like any of these books, what to expect from some of these books. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next video, everybody. Thanks. Bye.